Hi everyone, Heather here with astrologywithheather.com, and I am back with a special video. Today we're going to be discussing your most frequently asked questions that literally show up in every single one of my weekly forecasts. And so rather than going through and explaining this in every video, because it takes a lot of time and the videos are already quite long for my forecast, usually 40 minutes to sometimes over an hour. I'm going to just do this video, and that way you guys can always refer back to it. And really the aim here is to help you all to get the most out of the general YouTube forecast that I do and that some other astrologers do here on YouTube as well. The best possible way to get a very intricate, detailed forecast is, of course, to get a personal reading, which you can always do with me. The link is down in the description below. But it's not always feasible to get a reading every single week, every single month, or sometimes it's just not financially possible. And so what I want to do here is to help you to get the most detailed, nuanced interpretation that you can out of my general weekly forecasts. And this will be applicable for not every single astrologer, because every astrologer has their own way of doing things, but most YouTube astrologers who do general forecasts, they utilize these techniques. And so this can be helpful for you in navigating all the general forecasts that you listen to and read. So we're going to kind of get into it. And so the first thing that people always ask the most is, which sign should I be listening for? Should I listen for my sun sign, my rising sign, my moon sign? What if Venus or Jupiter or all of these other planets are in the sign that you're talking about, with maybe transits from Saturn and Capricorn, or Jupiter and Sagittarius? How do I navigate this, right? What's going to be the most important? And so the one thing that I do mention sometimes in my videos is that for the forecast that I personally do, it is best to listen to your rising sign first and your sun sign as a secondary interpretation. The combination of both of those energies is going to give you a bigger, better picture of what's actually coming up for you for the week ahead. And so the reason for this is that when we do these general forecasts for all 12 signs, typically what most astrologers do is they utilize what's called a solar chart or a sunrise chart. And so what this is a chart that is cast where it puts your sun on the ascendant of the chart. And so essentially we're reading this as if your sun were your rising sign. And so this is a very applicable, very accurate way of making predictions and talking about the astrology, especially if you don't have a birth time. And this is generally how people do general horoscopes that you'll read in the newspapers or that you'll see here on YouTube. But there are other ways of doing this. But this is this is the way that I do it. And so if you listen to your rising sign first, and if you happen to know your rising sign and you have your time of birth, then it will place all of the planetary alignments in the same positions that they'll be in your birth chart, using a whole sign house system. And so there is the other question that I get. So first off, definitely listen for your rising sign first and your sun sign. Those are going to be the most accurate to what's actually going on in physical reality. It'll be a little bit different between your sun and your rising sign, but it is going to, both of those are going to be accurate, and they're both going to give an accurate interpretation in a general way for what's going on in your life. Of course, with a general forecast, not every single Virgo, not every single Scorpio rising, not every single Cancer is going to be experiencing the exact same things every single week, which is why I talk about general themes, because everybody will have that general influence. However, if you have specific transits in your birth chart that are very difficult, let's say, while there is very powerful, very positive astrology going on a more broad general level, you're going to feel the challenging aspects that are impacting your chart directly a lot more so than you're going to feel the general energy of a really nice trine or something like that between the sun and Jupiter like we're having this week. So you do have to take these things into account. And if you are experiencing something that's completely opposite of what these forecasts are saying, it may be because you have a a very specific transit going on in your birth chart. And that's where, personalized readings come into play. But I will discuss how you can figure out if you're having these transits, while you're listening to these at the end of this video. So stay tuned for that if that's something that you're interested in learning how to decipher for yourself. And so sun and rising sign are the first two that, I recommend listening to, and they're going to bring you a good degree of accuracy in these forecasts. The other thing that people often ask is, should I listen for my moon sign? Because a lot of astrologers say, listen for your sun, your moon, and your rising. If you feel that is helpful to you, I can see how that would work, and that is similar to sort of putting the sun on the rising. It would be putting the moon on the rising. And so this would still give an accurate interpretation of the energy at play. However, you'd have to translate it in your mind to be more of an internalized influence, where it's influencing your emotions, it's influencing your subjective reality, it's influencing your intuition, your creativity, your sense of safety and security on an internal level. So this is going to be more of an internal influence instead of an external influence, where when I'm talking about the astrology for the rising and sun signs, I'm talking more about the external manifestations of these energies. But if you can take that in your head and turn it inward, right, and make it applicable to your subjective sense of reality, then absolutely listen for your moon sign. Also, if you're a Cancer rising, you are ruled by the moon. Your chart is ruled by the moon. And so listening for your moon sign will actually bring more physical influence than it will for the other signs. And so that's important to take into account as well. So knowing your chart and having a baseline understanding of your birth chart and your natal positions and what that all means really does help you to get a much more nuanced, much more usable and pragmatic interpretation of the astrology from these weekly forecasts that, again, are very general, because we can't, as astrologers, tell you every single detail of what's going on in your personal chart, because we're doing this for thousands of people and you all have different charts and different experiences based on those energies. But it is going to give you a general sense of what's going on, and having that baseline knowledge through getting a reading or through learning how to decipher certain things in your chart will help you, so that way on a weekly or a daily basis you can really pinpoint what's going on and navigate the energy ahead in the best possible way that you know how. And so that's the first thing. Which sign do I listen to? The second question that I get a lot is about Placidus versus whole sign houses. And so for those of you who aren't aware of what that is, whole sign houses are when you place, regardless of where the ascendant is, regardless of where the midheaven, regardless of where the IC is located in your chart, it's a chart that's designed where every single sign takes up an entire house. And so that's what I use for these general forecasts, because it's impossible to use Placidus for this. However, I do always mention which house these alignments are occurring in for each sign. And so if you are familiar with your Placidus chart, and you know that a certain planet at a certain degree is going to be in a certain house. So let's say, for example, you are a Sagittarius rising, but your rising sign is at the 29th degree of Sagittarius. So in whole sign houses, if you had a transit through the sign of Capricorn, it would be impacting your second house. And this is still the case. There's still definitely an energy there. I use both in my personal readings, and I've learned through experience in my own life and in the lives by looking at the experiences and the lives of my family members, my friends, and my clients, that both of these are applicable. You'll feel a transit in your whole house, in your whole sign's second house, even if it's still in your first house in the Placidus system, but it will be impacting both. And so if you know that your first house is dominated by Capricorn, but you are a Sagittarius rising, I do recommend listening to both Sagittarius for your rising sign and Capricorn if that transit is happening in your first house in the sign of Capricorn. So I hope that makes sense, what I'm explaining here. And I'm actually going to pull up a chart here. So the way that you figure out your Placidus chart versus your whole signs chart is you go to astro.com, and I'm actually going to include a link to a PDF that I created for the courses that I teach that explains how to generate your own chart, so that way you can figure these things out for yourself through astro.com through free software. And so I'll include that link down below. You can download the PDF and you can follow the instructions step by step, go on the website and generate your chart. Once you've generated your chart, I'm going to show you exactly what we're looking at here. So this is Johnny Depp's chart over here on whatever side I'm pointing to. I always don't know where I'm going. Okay, so this will be on the left side. So this is Johnny Depp's chart. I just chose a celebrity chart so I can illustrate what I'm talking about here. And let me actually make this really big. You don't necessarily need to see me as much here, but I'll get on the side here. So you can see here, nope, I just shook my whole desk. You can see here that for Johnny Depp, his rising is actually Leo, right? But there's a tiny, tiny little bit there where his first house has some Virgo in it. And so if you were to be listening to this for Johnny Depp's rising sign and there was a transit that I tell you that is occurring, maybe Mars is in the first couple of degrees in the sign of Virgo, like it is in his chart, and he's having his Mars return. And it's being trined by Jupiter. And so that brings a lot of energy and optimism and enthusiasm. And it's a really great time to initiate action. And so for him, he could listen for not just his second house, which is what I would be explaining for that Leo rising. He could also listen to this for his first house, so he could listen to the Virgo rising interpretation to get a more nuanced reading and get a deeper understanding. Although in this chart in particular, I'd really read this for the second house because it's really on the cusp there, and on the cusp it actually strengthens that. But that's a whole different topic that I get into in some of my courses. So, I'll let you know when those are happening again if you're interested in getting a more in-depth knowledge of astrology, because I'm about to be launching another foundational astrology group course that is going to be taking place in June and July. So you can get on the wait list for that. The link is down in the description below for that too. But anyway, so this is how it shows up in his Placidus chart, right? And so let's make this small again. And I'm going to show you the difference in his whole signs chart. It's not a huge difference like it might be in some of your charts where it's a little bit more relevant and important. But you can see here on this side that it shifts his chart a little bit, right? So he has his ascendant at the 15th degree in the sign of Leo. This just shifts everything. So all of his planets are in all of his signs are very equal in all the houses. It's just a cleaner way of looking at things that works a lot better for a general forecast. And it does have some applicability when it comes to personalized readings as well. Of course, I do look at both. It depends on, for me, in the way that I do things, it depends on, first off, what I'm looking at, right? If I'm looking at very specific, like literal interpretations, like what will your husband be like? What is your career going to look like? Then I'm going to look more at the whole signs system. And then if I'm looking at more of your perception of things and more of how things are translating on a psychological level, what you need in order to feel satisfied in your career, that might be different based on where your midheaven is. So I look at the Placidus chart. There's a little bit of a difference there. Also, it depends on what type of technique I'm using. So if I'm using a more traditional technique, in traditional astrology, like ancient astrology, the whole sign system was the predominant system. And so I will look at the whole sign system if I'm using traditional techniques. If I'm using more modern techniques or looking at more modern planets and points that were developed utilizing more Western astrology, I will usually utilize Placidus, which is an unequal house system, more so. And especially if I'm looking at things that are psychological, because that's what Western astrology is more focused on. And so again, it depends on what you're going for here, but I'm kind of digressing and getting outside of the point. If you're looking for how to get the best interpretation when you're looking at these general forecasts, knowing where your houses are placed in Placidus can help you if that's something that you feel comfortable with and that you want to look at. Some people only like whole sign houses. That's all they use. That's completely fine. Back in the day, thousands of years ago, that's what they used, right? So it is applicable. There's a strong history in utilizing whole sign houses, but at the same time, as we grow as in our knowledge and understanding of astrology, as we develop new systems, new ways of interpretation, more complex software to look at more subtle differences and nuances in the charts, and as we discover new planets and points in out in the ethers, out in the universe, things are going to change, right? So you have to sort of move with the way things are going as well. So that's just my little spiel there, and that's just the way that I do things. Not everyone's going to agree with that. Not everybody does it that way, but I just wanted to mention that for those who are wondering. Okay, and then finally, let's pull up actually Johnny Depp's chart again. The last thing that you need to really look at if you want to get the most out of these general forecasts so you can navigate the energy for the week ahead in the best possible way is where your planets are placed. And so this is pretty simple to do. If you pull up your chart on astro.com in the way that it shows in the PDF file, and I'm going to make this real big so you can see what we're doing here. There's a little chart in the corner. Oops. So you can see that right here. And so this is where Johnny Depp's planets are all placed. So you can see here his sun is at 18 degrees in the sign of Gemini. His moon is at 13 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. Mercury and Venus 25 and 26 Taurus. Mars 3 degrees Virgo. Jupiter 13 degrees Aries. And Saturn 23 degrees Aquarius. These are going to be the most important planets to look at because these are going to be more personal influences. So knowing the degree and the sign for each of your personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, is going to help you to get a much more nuanced interpretation. So if you know, because you listened to the start of my video, that there is that there's an eclipse going on in the sign of Cancer, and it's around 10 degrees, like the one that will be happening in July, on July 2nd. You can figure out that so you can see if you have any planets around 10 degrees in the sign of Cancer or in Capricorn or in the other cardinal signs, which would be Libra and Aries. And I always mention, which signs are going to be impacted most and what degrees will be impacted most. And so this is how you can figure this out. And so for Johnny Depp, his moon is in the sign of Capricorn. So he would want to listen to his moon sign as well and think about how that could affect him on a more internal emotional level, right? If you have an alignment that is occurring with your natal Venus, whatever I'm talking about in the astrology is going to be impacting you in your relationships, in your material possessions and wealth, in your own self-worth, in your appearance, in your feeling of beauty and sensuality, especially for women. So this is going to be impacting you on those levels, but especially on the way that you interrelate with other people. So in terms of impacting relationships. So you're going to want to look at that, right? And so listening for that and listening for Venus when it comes to relationships. When it comes to Mercury, if you have an alignment with your natal Mercury that shows up in the general astrology, you can take that interpretation and see how that reflects when it comes to your ideas, your thought processes, your communications, right? Emails, text messages, phone calls. Maybe you have Mars conjunct your Mercury and you find yourself feeling very anxious. You find yourself speaking very quickly, thinking very quickly, having a rush and a flood of really intense communication coming in. So thinking about how that impacts your communication, your daily commute, your relationship with siblings, neighbors, people that you communicate with on a day-to-day basis. When you're looking at Mars, so say for Johnny Depp, there's an alignment where Saturn is or was just a few months ago in a trine with his Mars at 3 degrees Virgo. And so this would come up maybe if it was being highlighted by a smaller transit. Let's say Mercury was trining Saturn in the earth signs in the general astrology. I tell you all that it's at 3 degrees in the sign of Capricorn and Virgo. And so he knows that at 3 degrees Virgo, his Mars is being impacted the most. And so this, whatever it's going on here, let's say it's Saturn, it would impact him in his ability to initiate action in a very slow, very methodic way, where he can create a better structure for himself moving forward by initiating things in a slow, stable way, taking his time, putting in the small little efforts on a day-to-day basis to accomplish and achieve his goals and ambitions, his long-term plans, right? So those are things that would come up for that Mars energy in that specific circumstance. So listening for your Mars would be influences that impact your willpower, your ability to take action, your temper, your passion, your sexuality, and the way that you express that on a physical level. All of these things are associated with Mars. It's the masculine, action-oriented energy in our charts. It shows us what we need in order to feel motivated to take action. It shows us what we need in order to accomplish things, to get that spark going, right? To initiate. And then when we look at Jupiter, Jupiter has to do with our beliefs about God, the universe, the world around us. Any transits to Jupiter are going to impact us on a more beneficial level. They're going to help us to explore and expand our horizons, to feel much more free, to feel really excited and lit up about something, to go on adventures. They can impact things like foreign travel or long distance travel, relationships with teachers, or wise figures in our lives, right? And it can have an impact on our religious, spiritual, philosophical beliefs. And then when we look at Saturn, Saturn has to do with the structures and challenges that we face in our day-to-day life, the burdens that we carry. And so the structures that we hold dear in our lives, or the structures that we have imposed on ourselves or that have been imposed on us from the outside, are going to be subject to change when we have transits to Saturn. And so that's something that you can listen for if you know that you're going to be having, based on what I'm telling you about the degrees and the signs and these general forecasts, if you know that you're going to be having a transit to your natal Saturn. So knowing the degrees and picking this out from astro.com, that's going to help you to get a more nuanced interpretation. And so, and also if you want to know more about the aspects of Saturn, how Saturn cycles and the Saturn placement in your chart will impact you, I'm doing a really in-depth 3-hour webinar all about mastering Saturn. That's going to be live on May 11th, and you can find the link to register at the link is the link is down in the description below to register, and you can get 25, or actually it's 30% off if you register in advance. So you can do that and get a really in-depth understanding of your Saturn placement and the aspects to Saturn and the cycles of Saturn that we all go through throughout our lives. But beyond that, so I hope that you found this helpful. If you have questions, you can comment below. I always do my best to try to answer as many as possible. But this is something that I just get asked about so much. People ask, well, what if my Jupiter's right here where this alignment is happening that you talked about? What if, in my Placidus chart, this is transiting my 3rd house and not my 2nd house? What if, my moon sign is being impacted, right? And so I always try to answer these questions, but I thought, people really want to know these things. And it's not just my videos that they're asking about. I'm sure that plenty of astrologers get these same questions over and over again. And so hopefully this will help you, because, I really want my readings to be able to, or my forecasts, my readings also, but my forecasts that I give here, I put a lot of time and energy into these, and I really want you to be able to make the best use out of them, because my intention is that you can utilize these forecasts to help you navigate the week ahead, to plan your week, to understand what's going on when things go awry, and to maybe navigate it a little bit more easily. So hopefully you find this helpful. And again, if you have questions, leave a comment down below. And just as a final little side note, when a personalized reading matters more is going to be when you have something like really intense transits. So if you know where your alignments are and you know that you're going to have like a Pluto square to your sun or something like that, and you can feel it, you can feel something challenging is coming up. You can feel that there's a little bit of a crisis going on beneath the surface on a psychological level. That would be a good time to get a personalized reading. If you're looking for specific insight into specific questions and situations in your life, that's where a personalized reading is going to lead you in the right direction. Because again, these general forecasts are limited in a lot of ways. And then also, during times of crisis, or when you're planning for an important event, launching a business, that type of thing, learning how to best utilize the energy that is available to you, maybe getting an electional chart for a business launch, that type of thing. So these are all situations where you'd want more of a personal reading, so that way you could have a very specific interpretation. Otherwise, listening to these general forecasts can help you navigate week to week. And so anyway, I hope that you find this helpful, and thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you this weekend with my normal weekly forecast. Bye.